Moto2 are up yet again here at Magny-Cours for another thrilling battle in France. There's plenty up for grabs as we will wait and see if there's another winner here today. Alberto Ferrandis took victory once more as Xabi Zurutuza starts from pole position yet again. It was scheduled to be a 15-lap duel, but it looks like that will be reduced with tricky conditions out on circuit, so do not miss any of the action. Don't be too surprised if we see yet another unpredictable race for this 4.4-kilometer Magny-Cours circuit. This is the second race of the day for the Moto2 category, but if race 1 is anything to go by, it should be an absolute cracker. 15 laps were scheduled, 10 laps now. Looking back at race 1 from this morning, it was Zurutuza who started from pole position and stuck it round the outside in turn 1. He was super brave on that opening lap. Those battles all the way down the order. Now, of course, the 54 of Alberto Ferrandis tried to make his way through the field. Radre sat in P3, sat in the podium places on the opening lap as Pavlik continued his run on the 44. But on the way with Ruiz in the opening stages, they continued their fight into the Imola corner, into the Imola complex. Eisenklopp running wide there on the exit as Zurutuza looked racy, looked like he was pushing and beginning to try and make a move. Those battles all the way down the field. Yambias looking for a move to be made. Daniel Munoz, though, just behind him as Alberto Sura fought through the field. There was a cracking ride from the 67. He catapulted himself inside of the top 10. Ruiz was continuing his run of form. He did drop back down the order as the race progressed, though, as did Oradri. Back down to P4, off the podium positions, and all questions lied on whether it was pace or if he was trying to play a game. Now, we did have this moment from Ruiz, the 72, taking his long lap penalty when suddenly disaster struck. Two bikes over the long lap penalty. Number 11 crashing out and Harrison Voigt continuing on. There was a couple of mistakes though in our lead battle. The 54 making a mistake at the final chicane, losing drive and allowing Pavlik through. And then the 44 making a mistake just 2 corners later, which then changed around once more. Mario Mayor had the high side on the exit of the corner. Big shame there for him. The red flag though was brought out near the end of the race. This allowed the 54 to take victory and to celebrate his victory as he dedicated it to Borja Gomez. But now, as you can see, completely different track conditions here this afternoon. Racing this morning was done in cloudy yet dry conditions. Now the clouds remain out. The rain looks to have died down from what it was just an hour ago, but now as the riders, they'll make their way onto the grid just very, very shortly. We will have an extended period once more for the Moto2 European Championship just to complete some sighting laps before racing gets underway, because once again, conditions are completely different from this morning, from race 1. My name's Lewis Ray, and bringing you along the action for this weekend is Jack Amy. And well, Jack, Moto2 race 1 certainly delivered, but a completely different task at hand for Zurutuza, starting from pole position, and of course, Ferrandis, who's going to try and convert yet another victory.
It was an incredible race 1 this morning to kick off the day's action, but as you say, everything's changed for race 2. When I came back from Parc Fermé just now, it was just starting to rain again, very lightly, not compared to what we saw at the start of JuniorGP, but it was just starting to rain again. However, things changed so quickly here that it could have stopped raining already. This is why we have the pit lane open for an extended time. It's 10 minutes, more sighting laps, just to get a feel for the conditions. The race has also been shortened from 15 laps to 10 laps.
Yeah, and that's purely just for safety reasons with the extra extended period of sighting laps to keep things pretty much on schedule as well, reducing some of the racing laps at that. And with the teams doing extended running on their sighting laps, of course, they fuel up for the race. So with these extra sighting laps, it's going to be running it too tight to keep the original amount of laps in the fuel tank, of course, because you could get to a stage where they would run out of fuel. So completely understandable why we're going to have a 10-lap shootout for the Moto2 European Championship. But if anything's to go by so far this year, it's going to be yet another unpredictable race. We've seen some key contenders at the front make a few mistakes, and the likes of the 44 Pavlik, he's going to be looking to go in the charge. He was disappointed to miss out on race 1, and that was obviously due to the early red flag. It looked like it was lining up a move for that final lap.
It did, yeah. Pavlak was perhaps was unlucky with the timing of the red flag, which left him obviously understandably a bit frustrated that he couldn't claim that victory. He has another chance now. It's a complete reset from this morning. It's almost, it obviously matters for the championship standings and everything like that. But what happened in race 1 in terms of the on-track action, you can't really use that as a guide for race 2 at this point.
No, you certainly can't. I mean, everything here at Magny-Cours so far this weekend has been changed like a click of your fingers. As Zuratuza and Alberto Sura do some running on the sighting lap. And I think that's somewhat smart, considering you're going to have some spray hitting you going down the straight. It's a nice understanding of what it's like to follow at least a bike, although they will not be going at full pace at the moment.
No, but you'll still get a rough idea of what to expect. And even if you don't get the full picture, you'll be able to get, well, it was like this at 70%. So when I'm pushing 100%, it will be a bit worse. It's obviously not the perfect scenario, but they'll have a good understanding of how the track feels and also the spray that they'll get from bikes in front of them.
It's not the perfect scenario, but I'm sure there'll be quite a few riders who are looking at this race and thinking this is their chance, this is their opportunity where they can make a move into the front group, because completely different conditions. We've seen earlier on in the year when we went to Estoril and it was mixed conditions there. We had about 4 or 5 different riders leading races in one, and it was actually who can make the least amount of mistakes in these types of conditions who are able to bag the maximum amount of points.
We saw in the JuniorGP race just now, mistakes are so easy to make when the conditions are like this. Brian Urate, not to spoil it, but made quite a big error, a very simple one in these conditions. It can happen. So this race will be about minimizing mistakes while staying consistent in terms of pace. If the track is drying, then the pace will naturally ramp up and riders will feel more confident anyway. Obviously, if the rain starts to fall again, then it's the opposite effect.
It certainly is, and of course the Moto2 grid, more power underneath them, no traction control or anything like that on these bikes. It is your traction control is your right hand and how much throttle you want to give your machine, and obviously with a little bit of lean angle, especially like we've seen at turn 5 for example so far today, it has been a very, very tricky corner, and with the extra power underneath these Moto2 bikes, I'm sure they've watched it on the TVs in the garages and they have a good understanding of maybe where they need to look out for, especially on these sighting laps.
Absolutely, yeah, and they would have watched the JuniorGP and the ETC races just to understand a bit about how the track is looking in terms of where you can race, but also riders will be able to see what other riders are doing to a very small detail that they'll be able to work out the best way to approach this.
Yeah, and well, everyone's going to have their own approach. I mean, for example, starting P2 in this race is going to be a Rajari. Now, it's been a good weekend so far, but P4 perhaps is not what you had planned for race 1. Maybe this time around, those slightly different conditions, is this going to be his time to shine, or is this the point where you don't want to make a silly mistake when you're fighting for a championship?
You definitely don't want to be making a silly mistake fighting for the championship now. We said for race 1 earlier, if he can't win, can't get on the podium, you take the best result possible, goes for every rider. This will be similar, but he'll want to use it as a chance to get back on the rostrum.
Yeah, I think as well it's going to be another opportunity going into this one and a different approach from race 1. I think everyone's going to be coming into this race a lot more level-headed, because if we compare this to what qualifying was yesterday, it was scorching conditions, it was around 30 degrees Celsius, air temperature, never mind the track temperature, and now as we head into this one, it's a lot cooler, the track's wet, and well, I think almost all the data from qualifying is going to be nearly useless, because the bike's going to be turned on its head to get it feeling right in these conditions.
Yeah, this is completely different to anything that they've experienced this weekend. Friday and Saturday's running was scorching hot, I say very high, well, 25, 30 degrees Celsius temperatures. Track temperatures would have been above 40, maybe even 50 degrees. It does get warm here, but it also has this. It can rain at any point here, and that will have an impact on how riders feel on their bikes.
Yeah, and well, that has been a key, I guess, a key feature to this circuit is the unpredictability of weather over the years, and I'm sure all the teams came to this weekend, certainly arrived to the circuit today, understanding that this was a possibility.
if they were looking at the forecast leading up to this event, it was changing all the time. For the forecast I looked at, the only consistent thing was there will be rain on Sunday. When, where, how heavy, it changed pretty much hour by hour.
And of course, the Moto2 field, it doesn't look like it's raining too hard, if at all. Right now, it's just a little bit of spits in the air. Nobody really with their hoods up either. The Moto2 field, with the extra power, it is at the point where whenever it starts to dry up, if it starts to dry up, you can easily chew up your rear tyre and suddenly you have no grip on the rear.
Keeping tyres cool if it does dry up will be hugely important. There are 3 obvious places where you can do that by running off the racing line. One is down the start-finish straight. It's quite short. You won't get much benefit, but it will help. Then the run from turns 3 up to turns 5. It's quite wide, plenty of water there that you'll be able to use to cool your tyres. And then from turn 13 to turn 15.
Yeah, certainly. And well, as you said, with turn 1, it's not a long straight. You're also having to get over back to the right-hand side of the circuit, the normal racing line for a very, very quick turn 1. But even with the likes of turn 3 to 5 and turn 13 to 15, the 2 other straights on the track are, well, when I say straights, there's 2 kinks in between them. And even when you're off the race line, you're still going to have to get onto the side of the tyre to get around those kinks. So it's still going to be an opportunity for you to spin up the rear when you're not wanted to.
It is, but if you're offline and on the wetter parts of the track, it will help a little bit. Obviously, not completely, but it will help a little bit.
And who knows, the rain could start pouring down again. It looks like there is still rain falling yet again. So that might not even be an issue for these teams. It might just be a case of learning the conditions. We spoke about it as well. Constantly changing, and I'm sure even from the sighting laps it's going to change. Of course, pit lane is now closed. Everyone is on the grid. And we shouldn't be too far away from getting a start in the Moto2 European Championship. What a season it's been so far. Can Oradre hold on to his championship lead? Leaving this weekend, leaving France. I'm sure he'll be happy if he could. Joan Gimbert starting P9 on the grid. So the number 7 starts 9th. Of course, a tricky race one for him, but still got a solid result, and now we'll be hoping for a top 10 finish. So now we will get set for race 2 in the Moto2 European Championship. So your pole sitter Zurutuza, can he make it win this time around, or is it going to be Fernandez? So the Moto2 European Championship, this is your starting grid this time around. Zurutuza goes from Oradre and Pavlik on the front row. Alberto Sura, Fernandez hoping to make it 2 from 2 ahead of Manjaro as Cruces, Voigt and Gimbert start on row 3. Meanwhile, Munoz, Ruiz and Morozio start from row 4 as Tapia, Rossimur and Yambias go from row 5. Fillon, Josh Watley and Volpe go from row 6. And finally, Mario Mayor crashed in race 1. He goes from 19th alongside Kersavan and Lolly as Alcubaese and Eisenklubb round out our grid. So 23 riders on this grid. 23 riders hoping to take some solid points, potentially hoping to take victory. The rain is well and truly coming down. You can see it on the camera lens yet. Again, you can actually hear it hitting the camera and through your speakers at home. But now, not too much longer to wait. And if you're on the grid, you're seeing the rain pouring, you're just going to be approaching this warm-up lap with a little bit of caution, but you cannot just dawdle about in the warm-up lap. You need to get the temperature into the tyres.
The warm-up lap is important for 2 reasons. 1, tyre temperature, as you said. 2, understanding the track right before racing begins. So you want to be able to push to get the temperature up, to know where the grip is, but you can't push too much, because if you make a mistake on the warm-up lap, it could be the end of the race before it's even started.
It's a fine, fine art, you would have to say, and certainly on the Moto2 category. And it's these types of conditions which you definitely do not envy the riders out there. It's such a difficult task, it's such a difficult challenge. But you also do have, we talk about rain being the great equalizer, you also do have quite a few riders who sometimes just take to the raining conditions, take to wet conditions straight away, and are able to push from the word go. Some riders just naturally have a good feeling in the wet.
rain is the great equalizer, but as you said, rain specialists do exist. There are some out there who just treat almost like it's dry for other riders. They just have the grip, they have the confidence to be able to push straight away. For others, it's more of a struggle sometimes. They're the opposite. They don't have the grip, they don't have the feeling to be able to push, and they drop back. So in that case, it's all about damage limitation. You take what you can get.
Yeah, and certainly for Oradre, that's what he did in race 1. He took what he could get, and that was maximum P4. Now with different conditions, is this a chance for the number 10 to try and get a victory here at Magny-Cours?
It's interesting to note that he did race here in World Supersport 300 and World Supersport and in wet conditions. So he does have experience. It was a few years ago, so obviously he won't have recent experience of it, but he does know this circuit in the wet. So perhaps that will play a factor in his race.
Yeah, I think every single little ounce of experience is going to be helpful on this grid, especially with the conditions constantly changing around the circuit, but the rain well and truly coming down as the grid. Well, it starts to get a little bit quieter, and this is where the riders need to remain focused. They need to remain in the zone and nice and calm.
Yeah, you have to remain in the zone, stay calm. Obviously, the Moto2 riders didn't experience this earlier, but they would have seen other riders in different classes go through it. Some share teams with them, so they can talk. They have a bit of experience that way, but it's all about staying calm.
It is indeed, and well, now we await for them to go ahead. As you said, didn't have this experience earlier on. The Moto2 class in general got pretty lucky with the weather. They were in between two showers, basically. One before the race that they managed to miss, and one after the race that they managed to miss. So the Moto2 class, so far, until this moment, has had it very lucky with the weather.
They really have, yeah. They've been able to dodge the rain until race 2, so yeah, it's a complete reset from earlier.
It's a complete reset. It's a complete guess onto who is going to be able to take victory. The bike's now being loaded onto the starting motors before we can get going. It will be the roar of the three-cylinder Triumph 765 ringing around the Magny-Cours circuit. You can see number 12 above the 85 of Zurutuza. Touching tribute once more. It's been seen across many of the riders on the grid so far this weekend. As it looks like a little bit of drama from your P2 sitter, Radri, but they've got that bike started eventually. Sometimes these Moto2 bikes can be a little bit tricky. It takes 1 or 2 attempts to get the bike started, but it looks like all okay there. And now we are ready for our warm-up lap, which, as you said, super important warm-up lap.
Yeah, again, for tyre temperature, for understanding how the track feels, it's important to push hard enough to get that temperature, but not too hard to make a mistake as the riders leave the grid for that warm-up lap.
So out we go. It's time for our warm-up lap here in Magny-Cours. You can see Pavlik actually on the 44 tiptoeing around these first couple of corners. Now, as the lap goes on, that's where they're going to be pushing a little bit harder near the end of it. That's where you're going to get the temperature into your tyres. There's no point pushing nice and hard into turn 1, suddenly realizing there's no grip and then crashing out. But you still need to get yourself to a comfortable place mentally before race starts. So by the time you come into turn 1 for the race start, you're able to push a good amount. And as well, super important to go full chat down this back straight, just so you can add up your braking markers, because it's not just all about grip in the wet conditions, it's about your tip-in points, your braking markers. Every single little thing that you've been dialing in this weekend at a brand new venue is suddenly out the window, and now you're needing to change it all in the moment and on the ball.
Exactly, you need to make sure that you know your braking reference. Obviously, things will change as the race. If it carries on raining, the track gets wetter, the braking references change. If the track dries up, the braking references still change. But you need to have an idea for, especially for lap 1, about where you're going to brake at turn 5, especially if you're looking to move up the grid on the opening lap.
Yeah, well, certainly turn 1, even in the dry conditions, is tricky enough on lap 1 because all weekend the riders have been going in there at full speed. Suddenly you come to a race start and then you're only getting half the distance to get your speed up. Therefore, you need to brake a little bit deeper, but you can't brake too deep, otherwise you're on wide and then get suddenly you've lost 2 or 3 positions before you even arrive at the kink of turn 2. And on the other hand, if you brake too early, you get swallowed up by the pack as well, especially in these conditions. It's those types of mistakes that we can potentially see, or some riders getting too confident in the conditions.
It's a balancing act between getting or not braking too early and not braking too late. It is in the dry as well, but in the wet especially, because, so, as we said, some riders will just enjoy these conditions so much that they'll be on it. And if you're up against a rider like that while struggling a bit, it is tricky.
Yeah, it certainly is. And well, you can see some of the riders just taking a minute, dropping back slightly on the way to the grid. That's just so they can be one of the last riders to roll into position, whether that be for tyre temperature or confidence. Some riders like a bit of time to sit onto the grid after their warm-up lap. Some riders absolutely hate it. Loads of riders like just to get to the grid and then get going again. It's all personal preference, and well, they all have their own thoughts. But it's risk versus reward in the wet conditions. Who is going to be the bravest going into turn 1? Oradre looks ready in P2. He looks ready to duel as now Pavlik goes into position. Pole sitter in Jerez, front row starter here in France, as we wait for the final checks to be done on the grid, and then we will go racing. The grid goes silent before the revs rise. Start marshal is removed and the red lights do appear on. And race 2 is underway for the Moto2 European Championship. Zurutuza straight away off the line, spun up the rear and nearly lost it from the start. So your pole sitter is all the way back down to about 8th or 9th position, and that's going to allow Ferrandez at the front of the field to shoot into the lead. So P1 at the moment for him, and that is just behind him Oradre on the number 10. So Oradre doing a good job as well. Is actually your race 1 winner, Ferrandez, dropping back down. So that's Sura that's managed to fight his way all the way through the field to P1. So Sura, out of absolutely nowhere, has managed to get the perfect start, the perfect launch, and definitely doing something pretty unexpected. As we see the number 7 as well, looking down the inside of Oradre. Yambias making up some positions. So Ferrandez struggling at the start, Zurutuza spinning it up off the line, and Alberto Sura from lap 1 sprinting away at the front.
After the first couple of sectors of this lap, it's advantage Alberto Sura. A perfect getaway, perfectly building up the lead. Unai Oradre also getting away really well. Not able to fight Sura for the lead, and it looks like he's dropping back into the group a little bit, but able to get away from the P2 grid slot.
Yeah, still a solid start for him, as well as Joan, actually, on the number 7 now. He's just behind Yambias at the moment, trying to look for any opportunity. Yambias has managed to get through, as number 7 looks up the inside. Yambias, though, looks up the inside of Oradre. It's going to be side-by-side heading into Imola, but all nice and clean, and really a nice clean move to be making in the wet conditions. But Oradre, a good initial launch, but perhaps just taking a little bit longer at the moment to feel the conditions, because at the moment he's not going to be worrying too much about his championship order when he's still in a podium position. These are the results he needs to be getting. He needs to be staying around these podium places, or at least matching the pace of the podium runners.
Absolutely, a podium is a good result for Oradre in terms of the championship. You can just see how little lean angle they're putting on through these corners. It's raining really heavily. They are tiptoeing around this circuit at the moment.
Yeah, they're tiptoeing around, and actually just over the curb there, that was the 54 of Ferrandez. But as we continue on, we say about the lean angle, of course some riders like to use the wet knee sliders. No jump starts as well, nice to see, but some riders like to use the wet knee sliders, some don't. Some say it gives you more feel, some don't. It's complete personal preference in terms of that, but a lot of them actually, the riding styles at the moment look from riding styles around 10 years ago out on circuit. It just shows how treacherous the conditions are out there. But Alberto Sura, absolutely flyer at the start, but Yambias up 13 positions on this opening lap. What an incredible start from the 94. Of course, the Calyx doing a good job right now, it seems, in the wet conditions, as Ferrandez now makes his way up inside P4.
Yambias with a sensational first lap and a bit to move into second. The Uruguayan doing extremely well in these conditions. And as you say, Ferrandez, race 1 winner, closing in on Oradre, who, as we said, maybe just taking a bit longer to get up to full speed, thinking of the championship. But the gap that Sura has at the head of the field, 4 seconds at the moment.
Yes, simply incredible stuff on this opening lap as we're on lap 2 at the moment. But 4.1 seconds to stretch out in just just over 1 lap is simply incredible, especially over the talent of riders that we're seeing at the moment. As we wait for the next split, it is another half a second gained from the 67 of Sura. Josh Watley as well, a good race so far for him. He's inside the top 10 on the number 70 and ahead of Daniel Munoz. So Munoz having the fight of his own. Slightly lower down than what he was in the dry, but still a solid result at the moment from this number 17. I think he would be happy with another top 10.
I think he would be as well. He's getting into the groove this weekend. He is performing well on that forward machine. And say running in the top 10 at the moment, just ahead of Josh Watley. We do often see British riders, when it rains, come into their own. As we see,
it looks like that could be a Radri. Obviously, we'll wait for confirmation on the numbers. We see a front shot of it, but that could be a Radri down on the deck. So number 10, has it been a mistake? As we do see falling down the order. So that was a Radri down on the deck. The championship leader making a mistake in the wet conditions. So number 10 outside of the top 10. Can he still score some points? Now he is shown as rejoining. He has indeed. And he's just trying to fight his way through Kursavan. So through his teammate he goes now. So P13 at the moment. He's up into 13th position. And a very, very costly mistake. Now we'll see it here, going around and just losing the rear. Perhaps just as you tap on that throttle, the rear just coming around and re-gripping, and down he goes. And actually open up his visor as he hit the deck. So quite a hefty fall, but luckily he's got it going again.
Got it going again, and in the points, just behind his teammates when he rejoined, but quickly got ahead of them. Now it's damage limitation. Get as high as possible for the number 10 to try and score as many points as possible.
And well, we did see Radri. It was a solid start, but then he started to drop down the order. I almost wonder if he thought he could match the pace of the likes of Yambias in second position. Obviously, Sura now out into the distance. 7 seconds of a margin. He's extended it once more. Alberto Sura at the moment, another purple sector 1, a purple sector 2. He's pushing on. He continues to push on at the front. And this is where the team needs to eventually come into play. Tell the rider to relax, to calm down, not push too hard. But also with the conditions being so tricky, when you're pushing hard, that's when you have maximum focus. And it's sometimes the moment where you just take your eye off the ball. That's suddenly when you make a silly mistake in the braking zone or going on the throttle.
Exactly. You want to get the balance right between staying 100% in your zone and when you're concentrating, but you can't keep pushing too hard, because that's also when mistakes happen. 7.7 seconds, excuse me, at this point, after 2 3/4 of the third lap. The team probably at this point can start saying, just calm it down, but he's just set the fastest lap of the race. Again, a 2:03.088. The gap now over 8.5 seconds.
Yeah, simply great stuff at the front. Sura stretching the margin away. Yambias remaining in P2 as Ferrandez P3 at the moment. Now, the battle for the final spot on the podium, I wouldn't say it's over just yet. 7 laps remaining, and they're not too far behind the 54. One mistake could be the difference of the likes of Ferrandez getting the podium, or even the likes of Zurutuza coming into play. That is confirmation of the fastest lap, as we said. But Kursavan as well, 64, losing a couple more positions, so perhaps a mistake there for him. But Radri still remaining in P13, and there is Kursavan actually down in the gravel, so 64 getting help from the marshal to head to the side of the track. And there is what happens, losing the rear once more, perhaps even an off-throttle high side. Just as he tipped in, no throttle on the rear, just came round to him. Very, very similar, and actually at the same place as what his teammate did just a few laps ago.
Yeah, obviously very low grip conditions out there at the moment. We just see him hobbling away. But yeah, very low grip conditions, very easy to make a mistake.
Yeah, super easy to make a mistake, but Sura at the moment, he's not made one error, and simply he's making this look easy, but it's not easy. He's pushing on hard, and you can see by his body language how comfortable he is on that bike. Sometimes when you ride in the wet conditions, you can look a little bit tight on the bike, but then Sura, as we look and wait for the gaps to update, Sura stretching his margin, and well, the race leader, he's doing an incredible job. With a 9.8 seconds. That's close to a 10-second gap, as backing it in nearly into turn 15. Then we have 16, 17. How much curb will he use? Tipping it to the right, then the left. Just staying inch perfect, millimeters away from that white line, which could end your race.
It could, yeah. He's judging what parts of the track he can use very well. A 2:02.1, so a second faster almost than his previous fastest lap. as the gap goes up to 10.6 seconds. Yambias losing around 0.8 of a second a lap, as we see the number 54 running wide on the exit of the chicane, rejoining behind Moto2 and ahead of Cruces.
Yeah, so Cruces now, I think he'll be looking for an opportunity, because that was quite a big mistake for Ferrandez, just running wide at the final corner, and as soon as he mounted that curb, he had set the bike all the way up, and then suddenly he was off into the runoff area. Luckily, it is there, but it's painted bits of tarmac, meaning there's not a lot of grip in these conditions. You have to still be super, super careful when rejoining. So losing the position for the 54. So Moto2 now into the podium positions.
He is taking advantage of that mistake, as we see Cruces up the inside of Ferrandez at turn 5, under braking, tiptoeing through the corner, but taking P4.
Ferrandez trying to get the cutback on Cruces this time around. Has he made it work? Yes, he has, is the answer. Now they head into the braking zone once more. It's a tricky section of the circuit. They'll make their way through turn 7, then turn 8 in just a moment's time. Obviously, the long lap penalty being located at turn 8. Luckily, everyone has behaved themselves so far in this race, but up the inside and just turning underneath was Cruces, and now the number 11 up into P4. What a move, as the 54 straight away responds on the run all the way down towards the Imola section of the circuit, the Imola chicane, through the right, then the left. But a great battle here for P4.
An incredible battle, giving each other the respect they deserve, but very close on track. You can see where each rider is stronger than the other, and they're taking advantage of that as they fight for this podium place.
Yeah, Cruces looks super, super confident in the braking zones. Now, as we come towards turn 15 in just a moment's time, this is turn 14 now. How much ground will he make up on the brakes? And the answer is multiple bike clamps. He's tailed onto the back of him. He's glued onto his rear tailpipe as we head into turn 16, 17. This, of course, is where Ferrandez made this mistake last time around. Will he be taking it a little bit easy? Will he lose maybe an extra tenth just keeping off the paint this time around? Is this going to give Cruces a chance into turn 1? Not quite yet, but turn 5 isn't far away, and that's where he first made the move last time around.
Turn 5 not far away. The slipstream effect, even in these conditions, will be profound, so Cruces will be able to close up, and as we've seen, under braking at all the heavy braking zones, he gains huge amounts of time there. So don't be surprised if there is a move coming at turn 5, although the gap does look to have stretched out a little bit through turns 3.
As now, just on the edge of the top 10, Ruiz up into P7 ahead of Pavlik. Now, of course, starting in P3 did the 44. Now back down to P8. As a little bit further down, we do have Aradri. He's down to P12, well, up into P12 now actually, but down from his race start, and he's made up another position, so closer to the top 10, and his next rival on track is going to be Josh Watley. Of course, Josh Watley, super, super experienced rider and no slouch. Previous Moto2 rider, of course, and now has been gaining loads of experience in the JuniorGP paddock.
He has. Just looking at the Sector 1 times, Aradre was quite a bit faster than Watley in the first sector. The gap's around 2.5 seconds, so Aradre has enough time to make that move to get into the top 10.
Yeah, he certainly does, and well, for the first time, Yambias made up a little bit of time in that sector. I say a little bit of time, 18 thousandths of a second. It's really nothing, and with Sura's gap now over 10 seconds, you would have to think Pitwall is saying P1, okay, 10 seconds. Something along that lines, just to tell him the amount of margin that he has with just 5 laps remaining. We're at the half race distance now, but still at the point where you have to remain focused.
Absolutely, yeah. The team will definitely want him to be focused 100% at this point. There's no point building up a massive lead just to make a mistake. Yambias did close in a little bit on this lap, 6/10 actually, so maybe we're at that point now where Sura is just starting to manage it a little bit, because 6/10 a lap is not going to be enough for Yambias to catch him.
No, it's not, and well, 6/10, if it just stayed at that per lap, I think it'll still be a comfortable winning margin for Sura. And I think it's team on pit wall, they'll be having kittens watching this anyway. Over 10 seconds of a margin for the 67. What's it going to be now, though? Has Yambias made up any extra time in the first sector? He makes his way through turn 4 now, flat out towards turn 5. And you can just see the rain pelting down the rear end, coming out ever so slightly, a further 2 seconds gained. And there is Yambias and Moto2's lap times. So Moto2 now losing a little bit of time on Yambias, but on lap 5, so just 2 laps ago, he was quicker in the 2:03 bracket, and that's really the pace you need to be running to be at the front.
It is, and maybe that one, looking at the whole picture, maybe that one lap was just a small mistake from Jan Bias that just cost him a couple of attempts to Zolotuza. But Jan Bias, I mean, he's in a comfortable second place. He's 6 seconds ahead of Zolotuza at the moment. He's obviously almost 10 seconds or over 10 seconds behind Sula. So Jan Bias is in a similar situation to Sula. The team will probably be telling him, you have a margin, just bring it home.
Yeah, exactly. Just bring it home. A great result. A win could be on the cards here, but everything can change in a blink of the eye. Of course, on the top 10, Josh Watley in P11 at the moment. Eisenklob up into P10. He's went right from the back of the order pretty much, all the way inside the top 10. As we have a little look at some of the riding styles. Now, of course, changing dramatically from the dry conditions. You can just see the spray being kicked up from the front and rear tyre, and some of the water coming out of the belly pan. But this is into turn 1 for Zolotuza. Down they go. There's a couple of bumps at turn 1, which I'm sure they'll be wanting to avoid. And certainly into turn 1, it's all going to be on how much you dare to trail brake, how much braking you want to get done in a straight line before you start tipping into a corner, because obviously in the wet conditions, you have a lot less grip on the side of the tyre.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, and trail braking in is obviously a hard thing to get right in the best conditions. So we've just seen a red flag has come out with 3 laps to go.
Yeah, so that is the red flag out, and that is Eisenklob down on the deck. But that is lap 8 of 10. So just 3 laps remains. I think that might be a result, but obviously we'll wait for confirmation. Sura definitely thinks it is, because he is celebrating. But that was at turn 8 and 9 that crash took place. But as we'll see a replay actually of what went on. So now just tipping it through. Munoz had his own moment, as just further back, just out of shot. Eisenklob managed just to walk away from that one. Wet conditions proven to be very, very treacherous, but 10.4 seconds was the margin between the 67 and the 94. There's just 3 laps remaining in this one. And well, what a race it was up to that point. What a ride it was from Alberto Sura, who makes his way around turn 8 at the moment, celebrating away with the marshals, who give him a round of applause. So round on this lap he will go. He'll make his way back into the pit lane. And of course, we spoke about how treacherous the long lap penalty could be in these conditions. Luckily, not an issue for anyone this time around. As on this cool down lap, a pat on the machine from Sura. He is delighted with that result. I don't think he can believe of his win. Success as stand-up celebration, certainly for the 67. From lap 1, straight away, it was maximum attack, maximum pace, and as we expected, that is a result. 2/3 race distance, no race restart. And that will be the Moto2 European Championship action coming to a close for today and for round 3. They will be back at round 4, obviously, but still plenty of action at Magny-Cours. It's a busy Sunday of racing as we tick just past 2:30 in the afternoon. But Jan Bias, he is delighted with a podium as well. P2 now and up to P8 in the standings on the Australia machine. So absolutely delighted as he make his way into the final sector. But Sura, well, he's looking pretty relaxed now. He's looking pretty cool, calm and collected on that bike. That's kind of how he's looked all race, is cool, calm and collected. Now, in terms of Oradre, P12 in the finish up over the line last time around. So obviously losing 10 positions from where he started, but still some solid points on the board. We enter Parc Fermé though, and Sura starts celebrations. It's disbelief, it looks like, for the 67. Jan Bias celebrating as well with his team. Zolotuza enjoying a little bit of a burnout as he came into Parc Fermé. But it's all celebrations in the Australia Lithia camp. It's been a great day, actually, in total for the team. As it's hugs all round. I think this would have been part of their dream for this weekend, part of their hope before the race. As we said, rain can change the results of a race very, very quickly. 0-2's up. Some hugs as well. And of course, we'll hear from them very, very shortly whenever Jack's down in Parc Fermé and has a little chat, just to find out the winners fought and, well, how Sura managed to stretch out that much of a margin that quickly. And then, of course, we'll be on the podium. The riders can get their trophies and the photos taken as well. But I'm sure there'll be plenty of team photos for them to take before we get to that. And plenty of people to thank. Of course, looking back at race 1, 0-2's up, did finish P3, so a double podium here at Magny-Cours for the 85. 5.9 seconds in the finish up behind Yambias, and there's definitely tears inside the helmet. So Sura, what a ride. P1 for Sura, and it is total disbelief. Emotional scenes down in Parc Fermé as he takes off his helmet. Of course, it's been a tricky weekend, a difficult weekend for all the riders. And for Sura to claim this result, I'm sure it'll be a day that he'll never, ever forget here in Magny-Cours. But of course, in race 1 as well, in the dry conditions, Yambias was P11, and now suddenly up into 2nd position. So, obviously, finding pace in the rain, and I think we'll see Yambias doing 1 or 2 rain dances as the season continues. It wouldn't be the most shocking thing, certainly, if these are the results that he's able to do, if this is the pace that he's able to show. P4 now in the championship for 0-2's up. Talks, of course, with the team over at American Racing. As here is your winner. And a slow-mo into the braking zone and heavy on the anchors before, of course, the red flag was shown with 3 laps remaining. It was first celebrations, then it was pure disbelief. And, well, pointing up into the sky, of course, in memory of Borja Gomez. We continue to race on today in honor of Borja Gomez. Emotional scenes down in Parc Fermé. So now, of course, as the team celebrate, we get to hear from our winner as Alberto Sura is with Jack in Parc Fermé.
Alberto, some incredible laps at the start there to pull out a big gap ahead of your rivals and then just controlled it. How does it feel to win that race?
I speak Italian because I have a one parlo in italiano. Non c'è da essere contenti perché questo weekend è successo veramente una cosa bruttissima. Per chi non lo sapesse, in Italia è mancato un ragazzo, Borja Gomez, che abbiamo corso assieme l'anno scorso, e quest'anno io avevo un bellissimo rapporto e mi dispiace veramente tanto. Secondo me non andava fatta la gara e volevo onorare queste vittorie a lui in primis, e poi a tutta la squadra, a tutta la mia famiglia, a tutti i miei amici che sono venuti qua e hanno creduto in me fin da quando ero bambina. Adesso siamo riusciti a vincere, è una vittoria nel bagnato, però la sensazione è la stessa. E niente, volevo ringraziare i miei sponsor e tutto il team, tutto l'equipo. Ciao.
Alberto, thank you very much. Congratulations.
So emotional stuff down there in Parc Fermé, but I'll look back at the start with 0-2's going from pole position. However, his rear tyre span up from P1, and he dropped back down the order. It was Sun Sura at the front of the field, and it stayed that way all the way until the checkered flag. Oradre though, P2 at the start. It was a good start to his race too, as Yambias began to be the rider on the move. The 94 diving down the inside there into the Imola chicane. Straight away though, it was more pressure from Oradre as Ferrandez with the 54 began his fight for P4 on circuit. That battle would continue all the way throughout till the end of the race. For the premature end, but we did have this crash from the number 10. Oradre did crash out. He would remount, rejoin, and fight his way through the field, finishing in P11 at the checkered flag. Sura though looked comfortable, he looked strong, and he looked confident at the front, as did Yambias. He closed in the final couple of laps, but it was not enough. Ferrandez, the 54, it was a good start, and then it was a crash for teammate on the 64. It's the 64 falling there as well, hobbling away for Kursavan. But racing would continue. Zuratuza now ahead of Ferrandez. Cruces ready to fight as well in the number 11. But of course, looking confident and strong at the front. That was Sura making his way through. As Yambias put in the laps. Munoz had a moment, and then Eisenkopf had a crash. The red flag was brought out with 3 laps remaining, and it was declared a result of 2/3 race distance. It was absolute delight for Alberto Sura, who will celebrate with his family, his friends on an emotional day. It's disbelief now as he lets the emotions settle in. On the podium now though, as we have Zuratuza first out of the riders, and then Yambias. You can hear the roar from the Australia Latvia team, and I'm sure plenty of fans around the circuit. And then of course Alberto Sura takes P1, and well, we just caught the end of we just managed to catch the end of the Sura interview. Of course, dedicating that one to Borja Gomez. Super emotional weekend, and thanking his whole team, his family, and everyone who's believed in him since he was a child. And he can't believe that he's managed to win. And of course, a victory in the wet for the Italian. As the trophies get handed out, we're just moments away from hearing the national anthem of Italy. Yambias though celebrates. Sura receives trophy now and dedicates that win once more as we hear the Italian national anthem ring out here at Magny-Cours. Celebrations continue in the Moto2 European Championship. That is a racing done for today. And then they'll stand together for the podium photo. But Sura, Yambias and Zuratuza, that is your top 3. So looking at the results overall, we do have Alberto Sura as official winning margin after today will be 10.4 seconds over Yambias and Zuratuza on the podium. Alberto Ferrandez takes P4 as Adrian Cruces P5. Gimbert, Ruiz, Pavlik and Daniel Munoz round out our top 9. It was a difficult race as we've seen, with Josh Watley climbing up to P10 and Unai Aradre down in P11. The championship leader going into this one, down in P11 ahead of Marozio and Fallon, as Harrison Voigt P14 in the points this time around after caught up an incident in race 1. And of course, Christian Lawley taking up the final spot, as we did have a couple of riders not making it to the checkered flag, 4 in fact. But all talk now will be centred around the championship gaps here at Magny-Cours as well for the Moto2 category at the end of the weekend. 14 points Unai Aradre leads over Alberto Ferrandez. A solid weekend for the 54. Alberto Suro, though, this victory puts him to P3 in the championship, which Xabi 02 is up P4. Pavlik sits 5th. Monjardo P6, with Daniel Munoz after another solid result, P7. Eric Fernandez, though, losing quite a few positions this round. We've not seen too much from him, of course. But P10 in standings, he now sits after this weekend. Rossi Moore as well, dropping outside the top 15 in the standings, as Adrian Cruces now P17. Josh Watley, of course, that top 10 finish. He's now up to P18 in the championship, just ahead of Lorenzo Fallon. As we'll wait for round 4 of the year. Now, of course, next up for the Moto2 European Championship, they'll be heading to the next round of the season over at Motorland Aragon, where then they can continue their championship fight. But Aradre still leads the standings, and well, everything remains to play for at round 4.